Our story begins in the United States of America, specifically in the heart of the metro. There, we see a person standing, clearly showing signs of worry and tension. Moments later, we see the same person running down the street at full speed, as if being chased by death itself. After a while of running, the person brakes, stopping to catch his breath into a dark, deserted side street. However, he's surprised. Shadows emerge from the fog and different directions of the street, approaching him. Upon seeing these shadows, he wonders in fear how these individuals knew his whereabouts and identity. But before he can dwell on it, 2 smoke bombs explode around him, obscuring his vision completely. And suddenly, he is attacked from all directions. Dodging several metal strikes aimed at his neck, he pulls out a small knife from his pocket and fiercely attacks the first opponent they encounter. After a brutal fight, he managed to kill the 4 assailants who attacked him. Yet, he is taken aback by a large number of needles heading his way. So he skillfully evades them with acrobatic moves and managed to grab a handful of needles, using them to kill 2 of their pursuers. However, one of them manages to stab him in the neck with a dagger. The attacks from the masked assailants continue relentlessly, hitting them repeatedly. Finally, their leader manages to restrain him with a collar around his neck, pulling him forcefully upwards toward the top of the building, then throws him to the ground. Upon impact, his bones undoubtedly shatter. The leader wastes no time and jumps on him, delivering a fatal blow, literally ending him, his blood splattering on the walls of the place. Afterward, the leader photographs the body, confirming the target's identity and documenting his killing before they leave. They disappear without a trace. Then we head to a more serene rural area, ensuring the atmosphere. In the heart of the vast cornfields, our hero Joe ensures the quality of his harvest before transporting it to the market. At sunset, he meticulously fixes his motorcycle, noticing someone sneaking up behind him and approaching. We discover that this person is Joe's son, his face covered in grease, taking advantage of the moment to shout at his son, Joe, and of course, Ren, who was trying to sneak away from him and hide. It's clear his plan failed easily. Afterwards, Ren stands still, shocked by the surprise his father pulled, then throws himself into his father's arms, asking how he knew he was behind him. His father tells him not to underestimate him because he has 4 eyes and points to the mask he's wearing. Ren understands it's a Japanese demon mask. At that moment, Mary arrives, revealing herself as Joe's wife and Ren's mother, informing him that Ren received the mask as a gift from a friend on his school trip and scolding him for the mess he's in. Ignoring her, Joe speaks to his son, Ren, warning him about the possibility of encountering demons while wearing the mask and mistaking him for one of them. Ren rebukes his father, saying he'll protect him from any demon that appears. Joe advises him to be cautious because if they catch him, they'll punish him severely. When Ren hears his father's words, he hesitates and falls silent. At this moment, Mary intervenes and assures him that she will help him and defeat all the demons in their place. Joe interrupts them sarcastically and tells them that he will continue repairing the motorcycle so they can know how to escape from the demons when they appear. He tells Ren that you won't help me, or what? Ren agrees to help his father. Mary tells him to finish quickly before dinner time. And when she goes to take Ren with her, Joe and his son scare her, and she falls for the prank they played. So she scolds them both with the basket of clothes in her hands. After dinner, we see Joe washing the dishes, while Mary sits reading a book in front of the television, which is tuned to the news. Mary listens attentively to the news anchor talking about the details of the murders that occurred recently, including the person we saw at the beginning. So she looks at Joe and asks him anxiously about the person responsible for these incidents. At this moment, Ren interrupts them and tells them that the demons are responsible for the incidents. Joe picks him up to put him to bed on time. When Ren doesn't want to sleep, Joe refuses because staying up late is not good for him. Ren angrily tells him that he doesn't like the expressions drawn on his face. So Joe explains to him that even his mother disagrees with him staying awake past his bedtime. When Ren looks at Mary, he tells her that he loves her under all circumstances to annoy his father, and within minutes, Ren falls asleep. Joe goes downstairs, takes out his phone, and checks the surveillance cameras around the house. He notices Mary's clear, worried looks, so he asks her about the reason for her concern, which is definitely not because of the incident she heard about. She replies that the way the victims died in the incidents they heard about is similar to something they know. Additionally, the police don't know anything about the latest victim, even after questioning his acquaintances. Joe sits next to her and tries to reassure her that such incidents are normal and that no one will discover their whereabouts. At this moment, Mary tells him worriedly that if he is sure that the Reaper of the Souls won't be able to reach them. So, Joe comforts her, telling her that the Reaper has nothing to do with these operations because he operates alone. He embraces her, reassuring her that they will spend the rest of their lives in peace without any danger. The next day, the family is seen at the supermarket, preparing for Ren's birthday party. As they exit the store, they see Joe wiping their fingerprints off the door. Then Joe takes Ren on a bike ride that he fixed. After they finish, they spend time in the cornfield, the day passing peacefully without any problems. At night, they hear the news about an increase in victims killed in the same brutal manner, with the police still unaware of the culprit. Mary informs Joe that the number of victims has reached 4 in 2 days. The following day, they prepare for Ren's birthday, with Mary bringing a cake shaped like Ren's favorite tiger mask. Joe challenges Ren to blow out all the candles at once, or else they'll have to help him. Afterward, Joe plays the guitar and sings, reminiscing about happy moments with his family. Then, Ren opens his gift, a handheld PlayStation, and amidst his joy, he notices that Joe is wearing the tiger mask he loves. Joe explains that he prefers to see him wearing the tiger mask rather than the demon mask, indicating to Ren that his heroism was just an act. At that moment, Mary removes the mask from Ren's face, expressing her love for him without any mask. Joe lifts Ren onto his shoulder, drawing Mary close, embracing them, and assuring them of her love and willingness to sacrifice anything for them. The day ends peacefully and without any problems so far. However, at night, the family is asleep when suddenly Joe wakes up, and Mary wakes up when she feels Joe moving. Joe reassures her and asks her not to worry, then goes downstairs. He notices a strange red light from the window, and upon seeing masked figures surrounding the house, he breaks through the door and windows. Several masked assailants enter and viciously attack Joe, but he skillfully avoids their assaults and delivers powerful blows to them. He manages to seize a weapon from one of them and fights back. Engaging in a fierce battle, he swiftly dispatches the assailants with lethal strikes, covering the place in their blood. One of them attacks him, but Joe defends himself and unleashes a series of rapid and consecutive stabs. However, he pauses when he hears Ren crying out for him. Alarmed, he turns and runs to check on Ren and Mary. But one of the assailants blocks his path, so Joe delivers a series of punches and throws him forcefully, then continues running upstairs. Taking advantage of Joe's distraction, one of the assailants attacks him with a series of poisoned needles, piercing his neck. Despite his severe injury, Joe continues his journey, crawling up the stairs. Outside the house, we see the silhouette of a person waiting in a car parked in front of the door. Joe makes it back inside, having reached the second floor, and manages to stand on his feet after a considerable effort. He discovers the bodies of several masked individuals in his bedroom, the room covered in blood. The shock comes when he sees Mary lying on the floor, holding Rin in her embrace, their blood pooled on the ground, surrounded by the masked individuals. The leader of the masked smiles as he stabs a body, remarking that Mary had caused them more trouble than he had anticipated. At that moment, Joe is consumed with rage but is taken aback when one of the masked drives a sword through his chest. With all his might, Joe tries to reach Mary and Rin, the masked still holding the sword that pierced his chest. Unfortunately, Joe collapses to the ground due to his injuries. Moments later, the masked hear the sound of police cars, and their leader is surprised by how quickly the police have arrived. He decides to leave Joe, who is lying on the ground, checks his pulse, and upon confirming his death, orders his followers to vanish from the scene. When the police officers arrive, they find only the bodies of Joe and his family, and blood scattered throughout the house. Sometime later, we see Joe's body covered in the hospital morgue, to which the police had transferred him. Miraculously, Joe wakes up from the dead, falling from the bed he was lying on. As soon as he remembers the scene of Mary and Rin's death, he faints again, only to discover he is now lying in an intensive care bed. Joe opens his eyes to see 2 nurses, one of whom runs to call a doctor, while the other tries to speak to him, but to no avail, as he loses consciousness once more. After some time, Joe opens his eyes again to find the doctor explaining to him that he has miraculously come back to life after being declared dead. Heartbroken, Joe asks about Rin and Mary. The doctor tells him that they were not as fortunate and had passed away. At this moment, Joe cries. In the hospital corridor, 2 police officers are headed to Joe's room. One officer remarks they didn't need a zombie to add to the bizarre events of the past 2 days, given Joe had been confirmed dead and then came back to life 24 hours later. Entering Joe's room, the officers introduce themselves as Mike and Emma from the FBI, apologizing for disturbing him in his condition, and asking if he had any information about the people who had invaded his home and attacked his family. Joe doesn't respond, but Mike notices Joe's grip tighten in anger when reminded of the attack. Mike tactfully retreats, leaving his card with Joe in case he remembers any information. and they leave the hospital. Outside, Mike tells Emma he suspects Joe knows something about the attackers, despite it being a hunch. They decide to keep an eye on Joe all day to confirm Mike's suspicions. Emma reluctantly agrees to Mike's plan, despite her reservations about the extra workload. By night, Emma watches Joe, who sits quietly on the hospital roof and informs Mike of the situation, waiting for his orders. Mike asks her to continue surveillance, and we flash back to the doctor suggesting Joe say goodbye to his family before their burial. As the nurse approaches the morgue door, Joe refuses to enter, his mind flooded with memories of his family before they were killed. Recalling their deaths fills him with intense anger, fueling Joe's explosive outburst as he retrieves a hidden metal needle from his hand and begins stabbing himself in various places on his body to regain mobility. Suddenly, a group of unknown masked assailants appears, attacking Joe with a large number of metal rods, but he swiftly dodges their blows. The assailants continue their assault on Joe with swords, but he evades their strikes and manages to grab one of them, killing him and seizing his sword. Using the sword he acquired, Joe strikes down the assailants with fury and brutality, cutting them to pieces. Taking advantage of Joe's distraction in fighting one of them, the assailants attack him with metal claws, but Joe uses the slain assailant as a shield to deflect the claws and overpower the assailants, knocking them to the ground. Joe is surprised by the confusion among the assailants and skillfully transforms into smoke, disappearing from the scene within moments. Upon reappearing, Joe decapitates the assailants, their blood drenching the rooftop. At this moment, Emma senses that something strange is happening and tries to intervene, but Joe strikes her, causing her to lose consciousness. Joe continues walking calmly toward the assailants. Several assailants attempt to block Joe's path, but he resembles a ferocious beast, focused solely on how to eliminate his enemies, effortlessly killing them one by one, as if they were a group of insects. With each kill, Joe becomes more akin to a ruthless predator, dispatching them effortlessly, as if cutting through a swarm of bugs. After killing the last member of the group that attacked him, Joe forcefully throws the sword onto the elevator button. As the elevator descends, Joe surprises the assailants by appearing among them, amidst the bodies of their comrades, instilling fear in them. Despite their attempts to flee, Joe doesn't allow anyone to escape. Meanwhile, Mike, still in the hospital, wonders why Emma is not responding to him, only to be surprised by a pile of masked assailants' bodies strewn throughout the hospital. Back to Joe in the hospital corridor, surrounded by numerous corpses. The leader of the assailants marvels at Joe's ability to survive despite everything that has happened to him. At this moment, Joe recalls what happened to his family and skillfully transforms into smoke again, launching an attack on the leader of the assailants. With each passing second, the intensity and speed of the mutual attacks between the leader of the assailants and Joe escalate. After a period of fighting, Joe utilizes his skill to create two copies of himself, confusing the leader of the assailants. Exploiting the leader's confusion, Joe stabs him in the abdomen with his sword. Despite the leader's attempts to resist, Joe's strikes are swift and relentless. Joe repeats his assault on the leader mercilessly until he ensures that the leader has lost his strength, then throws him to the ground. Joe approaches the leader with anger, demanding to know how he discovered his location and identity. The leader of the assailants responds that no matter how much Joe denies it or tries to hide, he won't be able to escape his fate. At that moment, Joe removes the mask he has been wearing all along, revealing his true face. With a look of resentment towards the fleeing leader of the assailants, Joe delivers a blow that ends his miserable life. Only then can Joe enter the morgue to bid farewell to his family and see them one last time after avenging them. On the next day, we see Joe breaking down the wall of his house, revealing a hidden box. He wipes the box with a strange inscription and opens it, finding a collection of photos of Ren, Joe, and Mary. Joe looks at the photos, recalling his memories with his family, but without any masks, showing them in their true forms. Then, Joe takes gasoline and pours it everywhere in the house, from Ren's bedroom to the garage where he used to fix the motorcycle. With a nearly emotionless look on his face, as if lost in another world, Joe lights the torch from his hand, igniting the entire house. Joe wears the ghoul mask and turns his back on the house where he lived his happiest memories of life, and he begins his journey towards avenging those who robbed him of his dearest possessions. And we go back in time and see 5 people standing in front of them, surrounded by a large number of masked individuals. One of the 5 speaks, explaining the ninja laws to them, emphasizing that the clan's secret arts cannot be leaked or shared with any outsider, no matter the reason. Their life's goal is to execute missions they receive and maintain peace, but they must be ready to sacrifice anything to protect Japan. After some time, terrorist attacks occur in different parts of the world, prompting the ninja clan to regroup. Their leader informs them that due to recent events, their organization will relocate from Japan and be under a stronger force's control. Consequently, they can now share the once forbidden secret arts openly, justifying the changes necessary to protect Japan's future. Later, one of the initial 5 individuals is killed, and the leader warns that anyone opposing his decisions or leaving the organization will be considered a traitor and hunted down mercilessly. At that moment, we see one of the masked ninjas running in fear. When Joe opening the door to the Ren room, he finds Mary and Ren dead. Mary extends her hand to him, calling him by his real name Hygen. He is surprised to find himself lying on the ground, and when he regains consciousness, with Ren standing over him, his face covered in blood, calling out to him. As he tries to stand and move, he loses his strength and falls to the ground. He hears a voice telling him his condition is very severe. Joe asks what he's doing there and how he found his location. The person talking to him is an old man surrounded by a vast number of cats. The old man tells Joe that he never imagined seeing him again before he died. As the old man finishes speaking, Joe loses consciousness. Moments later, we see Joe lying on a bed with the old man sitting next to him preparing some medicines. The old man apologizes for what happened to Mary and Ren and asks Joe why he removed his disguise. Joe explains that the organization has a way of revealing disguises. Since the mask is no longer needed, the old man asks Joe to remove it. The old man asks Joe why he always has so many injuries whenever he sees him, and Joe replies that he is a doctor and assures him that he will not contact him when he is healthy. The old man notices the marks on Joe's body from using the secret skill that allowed him to move while injured and warns him not to use it again or he will die. When the old man sees the wound on Joe's back, he is shocked and asks him how he is still alive. However, the old man guesses that he is either lucky or someone specific wants him to stay alive. The old man prepares to treat Joe, telling him that even with his strength, it will take 6 days for his wounds to heal completely. Joe replies that he just needs to move to start questioning the guest left outside. The old man confirms and adds that as soon as he finds the organization's location, they will hunt them down until they eliminate all its members. The old man interrupts Joe and asks if he will do all this alone. Joe replies that if he's worried about him, he should come with him. At that moment, the old man takes out a large needle and tells Joe that he won't feel any pain. However, as soon as the needle pierces Joe's arm, he feels intense pain to the point of passing out. The old man smiles wickedly, saying that Joe won't feel pain after the needle takes effect. Joe remains unconscious, covered in a blanket, while the old man disappears from the scene, leaving behind some medicines, a blanket, and water. Joe opens the bag he brought from home and takes out Mike's card. In the middle of the abandoned warehouse, where he's hiding, we see Joe emerging and confronting the ninja leader who attacked him, barely clinging to life. Joe retrieves his weapon and stabs him multiple times in different places without killing him. The masked leader looks at him and asks if that's all he's got. No matter what he does, he'll never get any information from him. Because ninjas prefer death over leaking any mission information, Joe looks at him angrily and stabs him, leaving the knife in his body. During the day, he repeats the same action, stabbing him multiple times and leaving the knife stuck in his body. And I don't know how he hasn't died yet. The leader tells him that what he's doing won't benefit him, and it's better for Joe to kill him and save himself the time. However, Joe ignores his words and repeats the stabbing dialogue 3 times a day, almost remembering it like medicine. On the 3rd night, Joe pours gasoline on the masked leader while he's asleep. When he wakes up, he tells Joe that he still remembers the horror and fear in his son's eyes before he died, not to mention his wife's hateful looks and screams escalating with each stab. Joe lights a match and tells him that these looks will be the last thing he sees in his life. He promises to send him to the depths of hell, where he'll suffer a torment he's never experienced before. Despite hearing the sound of his skin being peeled, bones being broken, and his body being mutilated, Joe won't let him feel the comfort of death. At that moment, Joe throws the match on the ground, and the fire ignites on the masked leader's body. His screams fill the place as he feels his skin burning and experiences the worst pain a human can endure. At the FBI headquarters, Mike is angrily speaking with his boss. He asks him why he was removed from the investigation into what happened at Joe's house. Mike recalls the hospital roof covered in blood but finds no bodies. He tells his boss that he can't act like nothing happened, but his boss explains that they can't do anything because they can't identify the blood's owners, and there were no surveillance cameras recording the events. Additionally, these are direct orders from the FBI leadership, asking him not to interfere in the case again. Mike accuses his boss of being cowardly, and his boss informs him that he will be laid off in a few months. Mike explodes and asks about Emma, who witnessed what happened with her own eyes. His boss tells him to go ask her himself and confirm the information. Mike leaves the boss's office, not looking ahead, and goes to Emma's office. He asks her about what he heard and why they're hearing everyone out. She calmly explains to him that it's clear they're trying to hide what happened at the hospital and they need to act quietly. She shows him the information she gathered about Joe and his family, revealing that they don't exist in the records, just like other crime victims who used fake identities. This confirms his suspicion that there's a connection between all these crimes. We go back to Joe, who packs his bag and prepares to leave after finishing off the masked leader. He exits the warehouse and gets on his motorcycle. He arrives at a place resembling a temple and enters it quickly, only to find it completely empty. He arrives at a place resembling a temple and enters it quickly, only to find it completely empty. Joe continues to move from place to place, and each time he reaches one of the organization's hideouts, he discovers it deserted and vacant. After a long search with no results, he decides to rest a bit on the way. In the same place where he is, two police officers enter. As soon as the owner of the place sees them, he becomes uneasy. One of them approaches and asks him, "Where's the money?" The shop owner hands him a bundle of dollars, but when the officer counts the money, he looks at the shop owner and asks, "Where's the rest?" Before the shop owner speaks, the officer grabs him by the neck and pushes him against the bar in front of him, demanding, "Where's my money?" At that moment, the second officer looks at Joe and asks if the motorcycle parked outside is his. He continues sarcastically addressing Joe. Surely it's not one of the motorcycles stolen in the past few days? The officer mocks Joe and asks him about his license, where it is. When Joe ignores him, the officer tries to grab him, but Joe swiftly breaks his arm and finishes him off in less than a second. He calmly stands up and leaves some money for the shop owner before walking away. The second officer grabs the iron rod he has and attacks Joe with it. Joe strikes him back, throwing him behind the bar and breaking half of the place. As soon as he exits and sees a police car, he remembers Mike's card with him, so he takes it out, looks at it, thinks for a moment, and walks away. The next day, during the day at the FBI headquarters, we see Mike reading the newspaper while Emma wears VR glasses and plays. Mike looks at her in surprise and asks if she's sure she's working and not playing. She responds that criminals are conducting all their transactions in VR now, so they need to stop investigating to have time to focus on the case. Mike explains to her that he's an old school guy and doesn't get along with technology, feeling that this is the work of aliens. Emma replies that all the advancements are thanks to the company Oza. At that moment, Mike's phone rings, and he receives a call from an unknown number. As soon as he answers, he discovers that it's Joe who's calling him. He throws Emma with the newspaper in her face, so she looks at him. When Mike asks him about his identity, Joe ignores the question and informs him that he has some questions that need answering. Mike tells him that here, it's the officer who asks the questions and Joe answers. At that moment, Joe breaks the phone he's talking from, so that they won't know his whereabouts. He then calls Mike from another phone and warns him not to pull any more police stunts on him, or he'll cut the call. Mike reassures him that he was just kidding. Since Joe is in a hurry, he asks Mike to specify the place where they'll meet so he can answer his questions. Mike is surprised that Joe left him to choose the place and isn't afraid of being caught, assuming he'll be caught anyway. He then specifies a Chinese restaurant nearby for their meeting tomorrow night. As soon as Joe learns the location, he breaks the phone and walks away. As he reaches the city, the first thing he encounters is an advertisement for the company Oza Joe, continues his way, and enters a building overlooking the restaurant where he will meet Mike, ensuring that Mike is not setting a trap for him. Meanwhile, Mike is in the heart of the restaurant, speaking to the old man who owns it, asking him to reserve the place for him. The old man asks him, "Are you stupid? This restaurant is mine, and you have no right to tell me to leave or stay." Continuing his words, the old man tells Mike that he previously warned him not to hold meetings there and disrupt his work. Mike sarcastically looks at the abandoned restaurant and tells him, "You're right." The old man asks Mike to inform the delivery guys that the food is for the table. At that moment, Joe enters. The old man gets up and tells Mike that he will leave for half an hour and return, and anything that breaks, Mike will have to pay for it. Then he leaves them and walks away. Mike looks at Joe and says, "I thought you were dead after all this delay." When Joe ignores him, Mike asks him to reveal his face to confirm his identity. Joe takes out the car that Mike left him at the hospital. Mike tells him, "What I've benefited from it now." When Joe hears his words, he turns his face away and walks away. However, Mike asks him to wait and tells him to sit down. As soon as Joe sits down, Joe tells him initially that he doesn't want any side talk and he will ask questions and Mike will answer without any dialogue. Mike agrees, and Joe begins to ask him if he has any information about the recent murder cases. Mike asks Joe if he will answer the questions he wants to know. Joe replies, yes. Mike pulls out his gun and tells him, remember, I'll listen to you for no reason. Surrender and raise your hands and tell me what happened at the hospital in detail. At that moment, the restaurant delivery guy enters, checks the food, takes it, and leaves. Mike looks at Joe and asks him why he didn't take advantage of the delivery guy's presence and escape. Joe tells him that he hasn't finished his talk yet. Before Mike responds, a new delivery guy appears, takes the food, and leaves. Mike approaches Joe cautiously, pointing the gun at his head. When he's right beside him, he's surprised by the appearance of another delivery guy. Mike tells him, leave from here. In a blink of an eye, the delivery guy attacks Joe with the machete he has. But Joe uses the table they were sitting on as a shield to fend off the attack. As a result, his mask falls off, surprising Mike, because it's the first time he sees him without disguise. Joe avoids another attack from the ninja and takes out his sword, attacking him. An intense fight ensues, destroying anything nearby. Mike pulls out his gun and orders them to stop, threatening to shoot them. Mike shoots 4 bullets at the ninja, but he deflects them with his weapon. Within moments, he is in front of Mike and attacks him with his chainsword. However, Joe catches up with Mike at the last moment and saves him from death. He continues to exchange blows with the ninja at an incredible speed. In the midst of the fight, Joe realizes that the ninja has 4 arms. He steps back and flips over a nearby table, throwing it at the ninja, who turns it into wood shavings in seconds. Joe continues to fend off the ninja's attacks, and at one moment, he uses a secret skill. Smoke covers his body, and he grows 2 extra heads and 4 additional arms. Joe attacks the ninja again. After seconds of fierce combat, Joe manages to seize the ninja's weapons and restrict his movements. Using the extra arms he has, Joe strikes the ninja, throwing him to the back of the restaurant. Just before Joe kills the ninja he was facing, he discovers another ninja watching the fight. Joe attacks him, catching him off guard from behind, as the first ninja distracts Joe. Due to the fierce attacks he faces, Joe is forced to retreat. At that moment, the ninja attacks Mike, who stands watching and unsure of what to do. However, Joe intervenes and saves him once again. He grabs a bottle of alcohol and throws it at the ninja, soaking his swords in alcohol and clashing them together to create sparks and ignite the ninja. With all his might, Joe jumps at the ninja, engaging him in combat. The ninjas take turns defending against Joe's fiery attacks and counterattacking him. However, Joe flips through the air multiple times, evading their assaults. He grabs a large bottle of alcohol from his side and takes a big gulp. He pours it onto the flaming swords of the ninjas to burn them. Seizing the opportunity, Joe throws his sword and pins the first ninja's hand to the wall. In a split second, he throws the second sword and decapitates the last ninja, finishing them off. At that moment, Mike approaches Joe and asks him who he exactly is. Joe replies, "I'm a duck from Beijing," pointing to the poster on the wall. Mike angrily asks him where the person from the hospital is. Joe puts on the mask and explains that he is from the ninja, and the people who attacked him were ninjas too. Mike is shocked to hear about the ninjas, but he never imagined they were real. Before Mike can continue his sentence, they are surprised by the appearance of several masked people shooting bullets at them, turning the restaurant into a literal slaughterhouse. When the bullets start flying, Mike and Joe exit from behind the barrier they were hiding in, but they are surprised by a rocket heading toward them. They quickly hide in the farthest place before the missile reaches them. Once the masked individuals confirm that they have destroyed the place, they get into the car and flee. Mike emerges from the dust in the midst of the wreckage of the restaurant, calling out to Joe, but to no avail. He approaches the ninja's body to examine it. Meanwhile, Joe is on the rooftop of the opposite building, observing Mike's movements. We see Mike examining the machete that penetrated the protective shield he was wearing. He wonders how the machete didn't leave a scratch on it, and wonders who could make such a weapon. At that moment, he hears an advertisement for the Oza company and feels that it's a sign. At the same time, we see Joe glaring at the image of the person in the advertisement with hatred. In the ninja organization's headquarters, we see an old man calmly drinking tea. We know that this person is the head of the organization. A person named Zay appears and informs him that Joe is still alive, much to his dismay. Afterward, we see a number of security personnel brutally murdered. The remaining group appears visibly frightened, attempting to protect someone. It's clear that this individual is of utmost importance. They quickly exit the palace, hopping into a car, trying to flee the place in fear. As they get into the car, the important person starts praying to escape the demons chasing them. However, laughter echoes, and sheer terror crosses their face. Suddenly, grotesque hands appear in the car, killing the guards protecting them. In less than a second, hands grip them by the neck, strangling them. The driver dies, and the car crashes into a tree, exploding. After a while, a ninja emerges beside the exploded car to ensure his mission's success. He checks his phone, and upon seeing a picture of Hagen, he licks the phone screen with a twisted, evil smile. He says with a deranged and sinister grin that he can't wait to meet him now. They'll go to one of the ninja organization's headquarters and see the same deranged ninja calmly eating. Shortly after, the organization's leader, named Yamaji, enters and sits on the chair opposite. The deranged one tells him that the mission was very boring and requests someone else handle such tasks as it wastes his formidable skills. Yamaji angrily asserts that the sword is a weapon without will, meaning it executes the organization's orders without objection. The deranged one explains he understands but discourages ancient proverbs and maxims, claiming they're in the technological age now, and ninja masks, secretive creed, and irrelevant traditions are unnecessary. He looks at him, smiles, and asks if he's still living in the dinosaur age, or can't adapt. Yamaji ignores his remarks and states that those expelled from the organization are not ninjas and must be eliminated mercilessly to preserve the organization's secret arts and prevent them from spreading or leaking to outsiders. The deranged one looks at a picture of Hagen on his phone and says he's undoubtedly a worthy opponent because Hagen was once among Japan's ninja elite, proficient in multiple combat techniques, besides his coldness and cruelty, not hesitating to execute missions and eliminate targets. He grins creepily, stating he can't wait to confront someone with such strength. Yamaji informs him they killed Hagen once before, confirmed by doctors, but contrary to all expectations, Hagen returned from death. The ninja's face shows astonishment. Yamaji continues, speculating that Hagen surely employed a forbidden secret skill to return to life. The deranged ninja asks if he means those secret skills only known by ancient ninjas, right? Yamaji confirms, understanding they must discover the secret technique Hagen used to permanently eliminate him. Meanwhile, a team from the organization prepares the necessary preparations to confront Hagen technologically. The deranged ninja suggests there's a much faster solution and claims Hagen will kneel under his feet, begging for mercy the first time they face each other. He then leaves the place, walking away. Before leaving, he asks Yamaji what the Reaper of Souls did on his mission. In this moment, we transition to an abandoned warehouse and see a hooded figure pulling his sword from a slain ninja's body on the ground. The figure states that ninjas using their skills without purpose is just senseless violence. He looks at Zai, the Reaper of Souls, and asks him how many exiled ninjas he's killed, or rather, how many of his former comrades. When Zai remains silent, the hooded figure continues, explaining that the organization has become entirely corrupt, and their pursuit and killing of exiled ninjas are evidence of the organization's failure and fear of them. For him and ninjas, still upholding honor and ninja laws like him, Zai's inability to kill Hagen is evidence that their adherence to old laws and honor was the right choice. Once the remaining exiled ninjas learn of this, they'll gather their courage and confront the organization exactly like him. The hooded figure prepares to draw his sword again and tells Zai to allow him to teach him one final lesson, since he was the one who taught him how to wield a sword. The hooded figure begins to use his secret skill, gathering a large amount of wind around him. At the moment he draws his sword, he creates a powerful gust of wind that destroys everything in its path, filling the area with dust. With pride, he declares it impossible to deflect the wind blade, resulting from his secret skill. As the dust settles, Zai appears standing in place, seemingly unaffected by the attack. The hooded figure prepares to execute his skill again, stating that Zai won't be able to evade his attack twice. However, he notices that Zai no longer holds his sword. In the midst of his shock, Zai calmly approaches him, hand in his pocket. In that moment, the hooded figure realizes that Zai's sword is lodged in his chest, and he has lost the fight. He falls to the ground in his last breaths, stating that he'll await Zai again in the depths of hell. We return to Yamaji and the deranged one. The deranged one says that Zai surely died and will face Hagen again after failing to kill him the first time. Yamaji informs him that he prevented Zai from facing Hagen for whatever reason. The deranged one questions Yamaji's decision and asks for the reason. We leave Yamaji and the deranged one and head to the police station next to the destroyed restaurant. We see Mike arguing with the officer, not believing what's written in the case file. The officer explains that the restaurant was being used by the Chinese mafia for money laundering, and luckily they discovered it due to the gang fights. Mike, knowing it's all a lie to cover up what's happening, explodes at the officer, asking who else besides them washes dishes. He glares angrily at the officer, and before he can speak, his manager appears and calls him out. Mike and his manager leave the department and head to an empty place. The manager begins speaking and asks Mike to focus on his work and not get involved in trouble he can avoid. Otherwise, they'll have to chase the person he was meeting at the restaurant as well. He asks Mike to think carefully because his decision might cost him the chance to retire peacefully and enjoy fishing in his final days. He assures him he'll send him some nice gifts and a fishing rod if he listens to him. Mike sarcastically tells him that it's a tempting offer, and surely the fishing rod will be from Oza Company. At that moment, the manager turns around and asks Mike to take a rest because he's surely exhausted and unaware of what he's doing, possibly making a wrong decision due to his current state. Therefore, he hands him a leave request until his retirement time and advises him to consider it since they are friends, leaving him and walking away. In an abandoned building, we find Huygen sitting by the fire, crafting a weapon to use. As he hammers on the weapon, he remembers the death scene of his wife and son. Unable to control himself, his entire body trembles and he feels he's losing control of his nerves. But after a while, he manages to calm himself down. At that moment, Mike arrives in his broken car, carrying a box of vegetables and food. He explains that he never imagined he'd have to pay for the old man's restaurant, especially since the old man is now accused of something he didn't do and will end up in jail. Opening the car, he takes out a duck and asks Huygen if he knows how to cook Beijing duck. Inside the building, Mike explains to Huygen the information he received from the attack that occurred in the restaurant. The most important thing is that the weapons the ninjas were using were made of a special metal under the full control of the Oza Company. It's clear that there is a strong connection between Oza and the ninja organization. Mike continues his speech, stating that he will continue to search for more information, but Oza Company is so dangerous that they control the FBI and are trying to keep him away from this case by all means. He admits that he can't blame his manager, as he would have died in the recent attack. Huygen knows that they killed his family and him too, so he won't rest until he kills the last one of them and makes them pay. Mike looks at him and explains that he'll have to arrest him if he remains determined to kill them. However, there are more important things than arresting him now, so he'll cooperate with him. He throws the leave request into the fire, stating that his first and last goal is to protect the citizens from criminals. During his time at the department, he hasn't encountered cases involving mysterious ninjas, so he'll need Huygen's help. Huygen offers him a cup, pouring a drink for him, explaining that it's tradition for allies to drink together. When Mike drinks, he's shocked by the taste of the drink and asks Huygen what he drank. He calmly replies that it's an energy drink. Mike questions if this is the official drink of the ninjas. Huygen clarifies that he likes the drink, but has no connection to ninjas. Mike redirects the conversation back to their topic, now that they've reached the end of the thread, which is the Oza Company. He arranged for someone with information about the company to meet them, and as they hear the door opening, Mike assumes the person has arrived. After a while, we find Mike and Huygen waiting in a car cinema. They're waiting for Emma, and Mike shouts at her for being late for the appointment that they were supposed to meet. She tells him that his attitude will leave him spending his entire life alone without getting married. He ignores her comment, saying it's not justified for her to be late every time. Emma looks at him annoyed, justifying her lateness by bringing the cool car she's driving. Mike asks her what's cool about the junk car she's riding. Emma gets annoyed by his comment and tells him to look at his own car first and then speak, and he said that at least his car arrived on time, unlike hers. At that moment, Huygen intervenes and starts explaining some information about Emma's car, saying it's a nice car. Emma rejoices at Huygen's words, praises his information, and says that surely the ninjas know everything. Huygen looks angrily at Mike, and Mike said, "Don't worry, she is one of us." Mike interrupts quickly and silences her, telling her they're here to work, not to satisfy her curiosity. Emma then opens the car door and asks them to get in. However, the place is obviously tight for them, and they argue a bit. Emma starts typing on the dashboard, and suddenly the car transforms, displaying various screens with a lot of information about the Oza Company. Huygen is surprised by the sudden change that happened to the car. Emma proudly explains to them that her car is a modern mobile computer, capable of gathering information from all over the world within seconds. She informs them that she did some research on the Oza company and starts summarizing what she found. The summary is that the Oza company works in developing weapons, technology, economy, entertainment, sun, sports, and energy. In short, the company has branches in every field of technology and life in general. They have branches in almost every country in the world, and their systems replace other systems in all fields. Moreover, they have control over the markets in all fields, and no country can do without the various services the company offers. In other words, the company is almost dominating the world. However, this massive and rapid development has a dark side that raises suspicions. This is because all the important figures opposing the company or its policies, as well as journalists attempting to uncover more information about it, have all died in mysterious accidents without explanation until now. The latest victim was a prominent politician in Europe who strongly opposed the company's entry into his country. At this moment, the image of the person the deranged ninja killed appears. But as soon as he dies, the person who takes his place warmly welcomes the company and allows them to take control of the state. Emma guesses that all these mysterious incidents were carried out by the ninjas who collaborate with or are affiliated with Ozawa. Mike puts his hand to his head and says, "This is what we've been missing. A global conspiracy between ninjas and Ozawa." We go to a laboratory at one of Ozawa's headquarters and see the company's CEO with a group of scientists monitoring the operation of the company's first nuclear reactor, which will greatly enhance their capabilities. The CEO's face lights up as he explains to them that this invention will change the future, and the next step is to use nuclear energy in everyday life, which will completely change life as we know it. Moreover, Ozawa will become the best and most important company on the planet. The CEO leaves the lab and is surprised to find Yamaji waiting for him angrily. He welcomes him and concludes that there is something very important for him to meet him personally. Yamaji deletes the images of the masked attackers who assaulted Hagen and Mike at the restaurant. The CEO begins to explain to him that they are affiliated with his company and needed to test a new weapon they created. The best target to test it on was the ninja whose abilities surpass those of humans, but they would certainly test it on exiled ninjas who have no affiliation with their organization. Yamaji glares at him with one eye, and the CEO justifies his position that next time he will inform him before acting. He understands that the test results will benefit both of them, since they are partners. Yamaji calmly gets up and warns him not to do this again or interfere in their work. Then he leaves. We return to Hagen and Mike, who are still listening to Emma's unfinished explanation. Emma informs them that the company's headquarters are located in an industrial city named after the company, where all the company's technology and inventions are tested. At that moment, Mike points out a location in the building. But Hagen is distracted, and before he understands what's happening, he is surprised by a sword piercing through the car roof, revealing the ninja's whereabouts. This attack repeats more than once. Hagen asks Emma to drive the car quickly, and Mike takes out his gun and fires several shots at the car roof. But none of the bullets hit the ninja hiding and attacking them. Hagen closes his eyes and focuses to precisely locate the ninja's position and uses his sword to stab him. Mike asks if the attack was successful before Hagen can speak. A garbage truck hits the car and sends it flying down the street. Hagen slowly wakes up from the shock and discovers that Mike and Emma are unconscious. He looks through the broken car window and sees the ninja who attacked them standing in the middle of the street. He extends his hand toward the car and throws a large number of knives at them. Hagen ducks to avoid the attack and jumps out of the broken car window. As soon as he gets out, he is greeted by a rain of knives aimed at him, but he manages to deflect them. He engages in a fierce fight with the ninja, wearing a strange mask. After exchanging a few blows, they move into a side street and continue their battle. Hagen jumps into the air to avoid the ninja's attacks, but the ninja follows him, and they continue fighting mid-air. Eventually, they end up on the rooftop, where the ninja successfully strikes Hagen and throws him off. At that moment, the ninja's back reveals 6 sensors, with cameras aimed at Hagen, and without any warning, knives emerge from them, attacking Hagen fiercely and ruthlessly. With great speed, Hagen manages to dodge and block the attacks, but he gets injured due to the large number of sensors. At this moment, he uses his smoke skill to form 6 arms and grab the sensors, but as soon as he grabs them, the sensors transform into tentacles that entwine around his 6 arms and restrain him. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the ninja attacks Hagen with full force. However, Hagen quickly retreats and dodges the attacks at the last moment. using his superhuman strength to incapacitate the ninja and slam him into the ground multiple times. At this moment, the ninja begins launching missiles from his back at Hagen. Hagen manages to evade the missiles, and the ninja tries to restrain him with the sensors so he doesn't escape. Hagen uses his sword to detonate the missiles before they reach him, but he is surprised by a new barrage of missiles flying towards him in the air. With incredible agility and skill, Hagen twists his body in the air, evading the missiles, and throws his sword with force, hitting the ninja thrown from the impact of the blow. Before landing on the ground, Hagen uses his weapon to stab the ninja in the head and finish him off. He removes the ninja's body from the sword embedded in it and throws it off the roof, then removes the camera attached to his back. Meanwhile, the deranged ninja watches the fight through the camera. Hagen looks at the camera and gestures that he will kill him, destroying the camera and making the deranged ninja laugh maniacally. Hagen calls the ambulance, which arrives quickly. After ensuring that Mike and Emma are alive, he rides the motorcycle and prepares to leave, but he is surprised to receive a call on one of the phones he has. When he answers the phone, he hears a voice saying, "Finally, I found a way to reach you, Hagen." And with that, we have reached the end of the episode. So, who is the person talking to Hagen? Is he an enemy or a friend? Write in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive all updates. And don't forget to support us with a like and comment. Peace.